So how does Sturgill Simpson, a Navy vet, end up shaking up the country music scene and rewriting a rulebook on what it means to be an outlaw? Sturgill isn't your typical Nashville artist, that is for sure. He's more like a tornado that tore through the industry and set up camp somewhere entirely new. He burst onto the scene in the early 2010s and quickly became the face of a fresh, rebellious wave in country music. But his rise to fame? Definitely not what you'd expect.
Finally made it, guys. Big show.
From mixing old school country with psychedelic rock to throwing in some bluegrass and even some hard rock, Sturgill has always marched to the beat of his own drum. His music isn't just about breaking the norms, it's creating a space where surprises are the norm. And now with the new album out, Sturgill isn't just pushing boundaries, he's redefining them. The real question isn't what's next, but how will he continue to surprise us? And with all of the new independent artists that are coming out today, did he have an influence on that?
I shouldn't be here.
Right, it's true.
It wasn't an industry creation.
So, this is the origins and rise of Sturgill Simpson.
All around.
Sturgill Simpson was born in Jackson, Kentucky, a small town nestled in the Appalachian foothills. Though he would later move outside of Lexington, his early years in Jackson left an impression on him. Even from a young age, Sturgill was surrounded by music. His family had deep musical roots. His father's dad played the mandolin, while his mother's father, a big fan of Merle Haggard and Marty Robbins, had a voice that was gold. This blend of bluegrass and classic country was always in the background, quietly shaping the sound that would later define Sturgill's music career, even if he wasn't aware of it yet. But really, he was into rock as a kid and throughout his teenage years. Cream, Led Zeppelin, Eric Clapton. He said it ruined his life, but in a good way. Later on, Simpson moved to Versailles, Kentucky, where he attended Woodford County High School. After graduating, instead of pursuing music or any specific job in the workforce, he decided to enlist in the Navy. For about 3 years, he served and was stationed in various places including Tokyo, Japan, and this experience opened up a world of new cultures, but it also led to a growing sense of disillusionment with military life. After his service ended, Sturgill found himself in Seattle, Washington. Here he entered what he would later describe as the darker days. The rainy, overcast skies of Seattle seemed to mirror his state of mind. He drifted through life, experimenting with drugs and exploring new, often reckless experiences, and Simpson admitted that he was always chasing these new experiences, but not all of them led to good outcomes. His time in Seattle became a blur of parties and experimentation, leaving him disconnected.
I was going to all these parties and meeting people and exposed to things I probably never would have been otherwise, and just kind of, took it at face value for experience and jumped in.
One of the lowest points was when Simpson missed his grandfather's funeral. His father was an undercover narcotics officer, so Sturgill felt the weight of his choices even more because of that. At some point, Simpson realized that his life in Washington wasn't sustainable, but in the late 90s, he decided to leave Seattle and return home to Lexington, Kentucky, a move that would bring a pivotal change in his life. Driving through Kentucky in his old pickup truck, Simpson experienced an epiphany. Bill Monroe's Wayfaring Stranger came on the radio, instantly transporting him back to his childhood. The song struck a deep chord, reminding him of the music that had always been there in his background, quietly waiting for him. This moment was a turning point, reigniting his connection to music, laying the groundwork for a career that would soon follow. By 2004, Sturgill's journey with music began to take shape when he formed the band Sunday Valley. Their gritty, raw performances started turning heads around Kentucky, and they were quickly making a name for themselves. The original members of the band included Edgar Purdom, Gerald Evans, Billy Mason, and Sturgill Simpson. But Sturgill had bigger aspirations, dreams that led him to go to Nashville around 2006, hoping it would be the breakthrough that he needed. However, what he found there was anything but inspiring. Through his eyes, Nashville was dominated by a slick commercial version of country music that didn't sit right with him. He was searching for the old-timers, authentic musicians that could teach him the deep roots of bluegrass and country, but instead, he found himself surrounded by people that were more concerned with industry connections and pop country trends. To Sturgill, it felt like the city had lost its soul. He described meeting musicians that seemed to ask, "What can you do for me?" instead of truly connecting over the love of music. Here's an interesting story by Sturgill on the YouTube channel Guitar Moves.
These guitar players, just like playing pickup gigs on the streets, they'd watch them play for 7 hours. They'd never hit the same lick twice, you know. Yeah. It's just insane, the talent in the town. It sort of crushed my soul a little bit because I was like, damn, I'm not a good musician.
Due to all this, just under a year, he left Nashville behind, feeling that the city wasn't where his music or his heart belonged at the moment. Sunday Valley was put on hold, and Sturgill moved out to Utah, where he worked for the railroads a few years. At first, his work brought him joy and gave him a sense of accomplishment, but when he took a manager job at the company, the more unfulfilled he became. The higher level position, which he eventually took, turned out to be a pretty draining experience for him. Through all of this, one passion remained, and that was music. His wife truly helped him realize that this is what he should do, and by 40, he didn't want to have any regrets that he never really pursued his dream. So his wife really told him, hey, go for it. By 2010, Sturgill reignited Sunday Valley. This time they had a sound that blended bluegrass roots with an electrified country edge, something completely different from the polished Nashville scene that he walked away from. Their album To the Wind and On to Heaven caught the attention of those craving authenticity in country music. Sunday Valley's performances, especially their set at Pickathon in 2011, left audiences impressed. But one of the most iconic performances was when they performed Life Ain't Fair and the World Is Mean on Music Fog's YouTube channel.
Said you just worry about writing them songs, leave everything else to me.
That performance became a defining moment for the band and for Sturgill, spreading like wildfire online and showcasing a side of country that many felt was lost. But despite its rising popularity, Sunday Valley had run its course. By 2012, Sturgill decided to part ways with the band and step out on his own. On April 27th, he officially announces his departure. He had something to say, something different from the mainstream, and this next stage in his career was the perfect platform to do it. He was prepping to release the first of many albums under his own name, and High Top Mountain was first, which was rooted in everything he felt New Age country had lost: honesty, grit, and a respect for the traditions of country music. Before we get into these albums, I want to mention something notorious that Sturgill stated all throughout social media, on different podcasts, really everywhere. He said, "I'm only going to release 5 albums total in my career, and they represent the journey of a human soul through a Western perspective." And I know I'm going to be showing a lot of Joe Rogan in this video just because, let's be real, Sturgill opens up the most on his podcast, but check out what he says here.
I've got a very clear plan.
Do you?
No matter what, I'm going to adhere to it. So I'm gonna make a total of 5 records, and then
that's it.
Be done.
Why?
Only making 5 albums, and they all do serve a cohesive narrative of the life journey of a human soul. High Top Mountain was a seminal album or a past life. Metamodern was ethereal, literally like the soul's journey through space. Sailor's Guide represents birth and life lessons learning. The next one will be about life and sin, and we're literally going to go to hell. And the 5th one will be returning to the light, or absolution. And
throughout all of these albums, we have to give Sturgill's band and musicians that have worked on these records praise and their flowers, because they were a big part of this as well. In the summer of 2013, he releases High Top Mountain, and in a way was a tribute to his roots, a nod to where he grew up in the eastern part of Kentucky, making this album feel like a personal return to his beginnings. Musically, it's packed with a classic country sound. Think outlaw grit, electric guitars, steel, and even some honky-tonk piano.
Sweet, sweet kisses, mother got.
Tracks like Life Ain't Fair and The World Is Mean capture that high-energy, rebellious spirit. And this was originally written back in his Sunday Valley days, but it really takes on new life here with a lifted sound. And of course, You Can Have the Crown has taken on a life of its own, even being covered by Post Malone later on.
Well, now, Lord, you can hear me, won't throw a damn dog a bone.
But the album isn't all fast-paced and foot-tapping tunes. There's this softer, more introspective side with slower ballads like Water in a Well and I'd Have to Be Crazy. One by one, music enthusiasts and critics began praising the record and caught the eyes of many, including the Grand Ole Opry. In just a few months after the record was released, he got invited for his Opry debut. Just going back to that day he was in his truck and Bill Monroe started playing, reigniting his passion, to his wife really pushing him to pursue his dreams, it led to this moment. He was doing it. He states, "I credit my 82-year-old grandfather, Dude Fraley, more than anyone on earth, for among many other things, my musical education. He's the greatest man I've ever known, period." But now it's 2014 and we are at Metamodern Sounds in country music. And this is the album that really took Sturgill's career to new heights. I love what he says in Joe Rogan's podcast about if he would have pitched this to any label, they definitely would have shot him down for sure. Listen to what he said here.
So then when I did the second one, Metamodern, and now I've got this whole record about, like, you know, mind, the journey of a soul or a mind or whatever, talking about turtles and tripping. And like, I was like, I knew nobody's going to get this. Like, I can waste time trying to find somebody to release it, or we can just put the damn thing out. And I'm so glad we did it that way.
I also love this conversation they had in the same podcast with the album cover. Check it out.
My buddy that I did the thing with, we were actually trying to make the worst album cover of the year. We ended up making a top 10 list on Rolling Stone. We didn't get the cherry, but I was like, let's just make the tackiest thing we possibly can. Like,
Metamodern is known to be the psychedelic country album because of songs like Turtles All the Way Down and those funky guitar riffs in Ate All Flowers. But this album also has straight up country gems like A Little Light that get you clapping your hands, and also Long White Line and Life of Sin that fall into the rebel spirit.
Went to the bank to get my dough. I don't care where I go. I'm sorry, but I'm just thinking of the right words to say. Sorry, but I'm just thinking of the right words to say. Promise.
Really, this whole album is one you can play all the way through and enjoy, and might just be my favorite by his. Sturgill was now going on late night TV shows, and his music was getting more in the public eye, and because of this, High Top Mountain was getting even more listens. But just when it seemed like Sturgill had found his groove in the independent country scene, he dropped A Sailor's Guide to Earth, an album that shattered expectations. This wasn't just another country record. This was Sturgill, the new father, the Navy veteran, creating a heartfelt letter to his newborn son. Breaker's Roar starts off with this deep emotional vibe that's hard to put into words.
Oh, how the breakers roar.
The strings are absolutely haunting, creating an impact that sticks with you long after the song fades. And then, as to remind us that Sturgill never sticks to one formula, he throws in horns throughout the album, like in Keep It Between the Lines. It's funky, unexpected, and it proves that Sturgill is always pushing boundaries, keeping things interesting. And speaking of the unexpected, they cover Nirvana's In Bloom, scaling it back a whole ton, and honestly, it's hard to recognize from the original. It sounds completely different in the best way possible.
All our pretty songs and it likes to sing.
Giving the album another layer of depth and surprise. And then there's Brace for Impact, a standout track that leans more toward rock than country, in my opinion. In it, Sturgill's message to his son is crystal clear. Just live life fully and experience everything. It's raw, direct, and powerful.
Make sure you give me a little before you go.
But for me, lyrically, the heart of the album lies in All Around You. I can imagine years from now that this song will be something his son treasures. There's this one line that hits so hard. Just know in your heart that we're always together, and long after I'm gone, I'll still be around. It's a line that feels timeless, like a message passed down through generations.
And long after I'm gone, I'll still be around.
You could say it made an impact, as Sturgill won his first ever Grammy for Best Country Album. Just over 5 years before, he was out on the railroad, and now he had a Grammy in his hands. But in November 2017, following his Grammy win, Sturgill Simpson took a stand outside the CMA Awards in Nashville. Feeling marginalized by the mainstream country music industry, he busked on the streets as a form of protest, with a sign reading, "I don't take requests, but I take questions about anything you want to talk about." Sturgill played his music and engaged with fans, broadcasting the event live on Facebook. The act underscored his frustration with an industry he felt that had strayed from the authentic country roots sound, highlighting his commitment to staying true to himself. Next, we have the fourth album in his journey, Sound and Fury, representing rebellion and sin. If you're playing Red Dead Redemption 2 and you're opting for Low Honor Arthur, this is the perfect album to do it. This is pure unapologetic rock, packed with raging distortion and cool synth waves that could easily fit into a scene from Stranger Things. It was a bold creative move for Sturgill, and I remember when it dropped in 2019, it was actually my first introduction to him. So believe it or not, I got into the rock side of him before anything else. My favorite track from this album has to be Remember to Breathe. It's the kind of song that makes you feel like you should be speeding down a dark highway with adrenaline pumping. Plus, to make it even cooler, Sturgill paired the album with a full-length anime film on Netflix, which just added another layer to the album's intensity. Now we have Cuttin Grass Volumes 1 and 2, and I wouldn't say these represent the full 1 through 5 albums, but these are kind of bluegrass tracks and reinterpretations of his past work. Some of my favorites from these are probably Osera and I Don't Mind. They're just beautiful songs. When you have that just traditional bluegrass sound, Sturgill's voice just comes through so nicely.
Big old dream, I'm floating around on the cloud inside.
A lot of people say Sturgill's voice sounds best in this setting, with the rawness of bluegrass backing him, and honestly, I can't argue with that. His voice just meshes so well with the style, and it's hard to deny how natural and heartfelt these interpretations feel. Finally, we have the Ballad of Dude and Juanita, the last album on the list representing this coming back to the light in a sense. A concept album steeped in Appalachian bluegrass. While it's based around his grandparents, it weaves a fictional tale inspired by them. The story follows Dude as he embarks on a quest to rescue Juanita after she's taken away, journeying with his loyal mule Shamrock and his faithful dog Sam. Sadly, Sam dies along the way, but the song Sam became the most popular track, a beautiful a cappella country tune.
Most of all, he was my best friend, and he's gone too soon.
Ultimately, Dude finds Juanita, and soon after, it leads to a final showdown with the man who took her. It's a creative blend of family roots and fiction that showcases Sturgill's storytelling through bluegrass music.
Out of range of that rifle from Kentucky.
So now we're done, right? 1 through 5 is finished. We have the whole journey of a soul through a Western lens, a Western perspective. But wait, he released another album under Johnny Blue Skies?
When I moved to Nashville, I had this kind of distinctly carved out 5-record arc. But yeah, so that was done. It was over. When I was in my early 20s, I'd gotten out of the Navy and moved back to this town in Kentucky. There was a bartender, wore like a black trench coat and just stood outside like flipping a Zippo all the time. And when I'd walk in every day, he would be like, "Johnny Blue Skies." And to this day, I have no idea why.
So now, finally, we are in 2024, and he releases Passage of Desire. And this has more of a soft rock sound compared to his previous work. One of the deeper songs, Jupiter's Ferry, is about a painful loss of a close friend to suicide, with some truly top-notch storytelling. On the lighter side, mint tea inspired me to actually buy some mint tea. It's such a feel-good, twangy track.
Tell me why you're so afraid, little old me.
This album has honestly taken me by surprise as one of my all-time favorite Sturgill records. And I don't know if you'll agree with that, but I just love this kind of 70s soft rock vibe, and I feel like his voice just fits perfectly along with that. And of course, like with traditional country, I think his voice is amazing too. but it just feels so effortless with him on this record specifically. It's really fascinating because it's not a concept album like his earlier work, but it's rather a collection of songs that reflect where he is in his life at the moment. He spent a lot of time in Paris, which explains the French title. What do you guys think of this album? I'd love to know in the comments below. And lastly, Sturgill has been known to pursue acting as well, which is super cool. One movie in particular that I loved was Killers of the Flower Moon, and getting to see Sturgill and Jason Isbell in a movie definitely caught me off guard. I didn't even know they were going to be in it, and I was like, wait, that's Sturgill. But what I want to get at here is, what impact do you think that he's had on the indie country movement scene in the past few years, or even since, 2016, 2017? You had Tyler Childers kind of come up onto the scene, and so many other people got influenced by him, and it's really just been like just a snowball effect. I mean, you have artists like Zach Bryan now, that was of course kind of that fell into that indie country category a little bit earlier in his career, and now he's kind of blown up. So, but you also have artists like Drayton Farley now, Pony Bradshaw, you have Sierra Farrell, of course, Charlie Crockett, that came out in the late 2010s. But whether he wants to admit it or not, I think that indirectly he stood up for what he believes in, and artists nowadays aren't scared to make what they really love. They don't feel like they have to, look a certain way or sound a certain way. They can do, what their heart pleases, and I think people in the long run and their fans will appreciate that as well. So I think Sturgill did it right. But I'm excited to see what he does next. Whether it's Johnny Blue Skies or Sturgill Simpson going forward, there's always something new to look forward to. Maybe there will be another 5-album arc under Johnny Blue Skies. Who knows? Probably not, I'm just messing with y'all. But other than that, I'll see you guys in my next video. Take care.